The sun beat down on Jedediah's ranch, baking the parched earth a dusty brown. Dust devils danced across the barren fields, mocking his attempts at planting. It had been a year since Martha passed, a year of relentless drought and crippling loneliness. The ranch, once a symbol of their shared dreams, now felt like a tomb. Jedediah, a man weathered like the old barn wood, squinted at the horizon. His hands, calloused from years of hard labor, tightened around the reins of his worn-out horse, Betsy. Betsy was as old and tired as he was, her coat dull and her gait slow. They were a matching pair, both carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders. He rode back to the small, dilapidated house, the silence amplifying his grief. Martha's absence was a constant ache, a missing piece of his heart that could never be replaced. He remembered her laughter, the way her eyes sparkled when she talked about their future, a future that had been cruelly stolen. Financially, things were just as bleak. The bank was threatening foreclosure, and the last harvest had been a disaster. He'd considered selling the ranch, but the thought of abandoning Martha's legacy was unbearable. This land was their dream, their life's work. As he dismounted Betsy, a figure caught his eye in the distance. A lone woman, surrounded by what looked like a flock of small birds, was slowly making her way towards the ranch. He frowned, his hand instinctively reaching for the rifle he kept near the door. Strangers were rare in these parts, and rarely brought good news. He watched them approach, his heart pounding with a mixture of apprehension and weary resignation. Whatever trouble they brought, he doubted he had the strength to face it. He was a broken man, clinging to a broken dream, and the vast, unforgiving West seemed determined to crush him completely. As they drew closer, Jedediah could see the truth of his initial assessment. The woman was young, but her face was etched with worry and fatigue. Her clothes, though simple, were clean but threadbare, patched in several places. The children, ranging in age from toddler to preteen, were thin and dusty, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and hope. "Mister," the woman called out, her voice raspy but polite. "Please, we mean you no harm. We're just awful hungry." Jedediah remained silent for a moment, studying them. He saw the genuine desperation in their eyes, the way the children clung to their mother's skirts, their small hands reaching out. He thought of Martha, and how she would have reacted to such a sight. Compassion would have been her immediate response, a quality he seemed to have lost in his grief. "We haven't eaten a proper meal in days," the woman continued, her voice trembling slightly. "My name is Mary, and these are my children, Sarah, Thomas, little Lily, Samuel, and baby Ruth." She gestured to each child in turn, their names spoken with a mother's love and pride, despite their desperate circumstances. Sarah, the eldest, looked to be about 12. She held herself with a quiet dignity, her eyes scanning the surroundings with a wary intelligence. Thomas, a few years younger, shuffled his feet nervously, his gaze fixed on the ground. Little Lily, clutching a tattered doll, whimpered softly. Samuel, a bright-eyed boy of about 6, stared at Jedediah with open curiosity. And baby Ruth, nestled in Mary's arms, gurgled contentedly, oblivious to their plight. Jedediah's heart, hardened by grief and hardship, began to crack. He saw not strangers, but a family in need, a reflection of the vulnerability he himself had felt after Martha's passing. The memory of Martha's kindness stirred within him, a gentle reminder of the man he used to be. He lowered his rifle, a silent gesture of truce. "Come on in," he said, his voice gruff but not unkind. "I don't have much, but I can spare a little something." Mary's face lit up with relief, and she ushered her children forward, their eyes fixed on the promise of food. Jedediah led them into the small house, the interior as Spartan as the exterior suggested. A single table sat in the center of the room, surrounded by a few rickety chairs. A small fireplace provided the only source of heat. "Please sit," Jedediah said, gesturing towards the table. He went to the cupboard and pulled out a loaf of stale bread and a small piece of cheese. It wasn't much, but it was all he had. He sliced the bread and cheese into small portions, handing them to Mary and the children. They ate in silence, their hunger evident in the way they devoured the meager offering. Jedediah watched them, a strange mix of emotions swirling within him. He felt a pang of guilt for his initial reluctance, but also a sense of satisfaction in being able to help, however small the gesture. "Thank you, Mr." Mary said, breaking the silence. "Jedediah," he replied, his voice still gruff. "Jedediah Miller." "Thank you, Mr. Miller," Mary said, her eyes filled with gratitude. "We are eternally grateful for your kindness." "Don't mention it," Jedediah mumbled, looking away. He wasn't used to being thanked, especially not for something so small. As the children finished eating, Sarah gathered the crumbs from the table, making sure nothing was wasted. Thomas helped his mother with baby Ruth, gently rocking her in his arms. Lily continued to clutch her doll, her eyes now filled with a quiet contentment. Samuel, ever curious, began to explore the room, his gaze drawn to the various objects on the shelves. Jedediah noticed their manners, their quiet respect, and their resilience in the face of adversity. They were a family bound together by love and necessity, and their strength was both humbling and inspiring. He realized that they weren't just beggars looking for a handout. They were survivors, fighting to protect each other in a harsh and unforgiving world. And in their eyes, he saw a glimmer of hope, a spark of life that had been missing from his own for far too long. He cleared his throat. "Where are you headed?" he asked, his curiosity piqued. "And where's your husband?" The question hung in the air. Mary's face clouded over, her eyes filling with a fresh wave of sorrow. She hesitated, her gaze darting between Jedediah and her children. Sarah placed a comforting hand on her mother's arm, offering silent support. "My husband, he's gone," Mary said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "He died a few months ago." Jedediah felt a pang of sympathy. He knew all too well the pain of losing a loved one. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice softening further. "I understand." He remembered Martha, her vibrant smile, her unwavering optimism. They had met at a town dance, their eyes locking across the crowded room. It was love at first sight, a connection that deepened with each passing day. They had built their ranch together, facing hardship and adversity with unwavering determination. They had planned to have children, to fill their home with laughter and love. But fate had other plans. A sudden illness had struck Martha, ravaging her body with relentless speed. Jedediah had watched helplessly as she withered away, his heart breaking with each passing moment. He had spent all their savings on doctors and medicine, but nothing could save her. When she finally passed, a part of him died with her. He had retreated into himself, isolating himself from the world, allowing his grief to consume him. The ranch, once a symbol of their love, had become a constant reminder of his loss. He had neglected the land, his spirit broken, his will to live diminished. Now, looking at Mary and her children, he saw a reflection of his own pain, a reminder of the preciousness of life and the importance of family. He realized that he couldn't let his grief define him, that he had a responsibility to honor Martha's memory by living a life of purpose and compassion. "What happened?" he asked, his voice filled with genuine concern. "If you don't mind me asking." He already knew her husband had died, but he wondered what circumstances had led her and her children to such desperate straits. Mary hesitated, her eyes darting toward her children as if gauging whether or not to reveal the truth. She took a deep breath, her shoulders slumping slightly. "He was a miner," she began, her voice low and strained. "He found something some very bad men wanted." Before she could elaborate, Sarah spoke up, her voice firm and protective. "Mama, please, you don't have to tell him everything." Mary nodded, acknowledging her daughter's concern. "You're right, sweetheart. It's not safe." Jedediah understood. He had seen enough of the world to know that some secrets were best kept hidden, but his curiosity was piqued. What had Mary's husband found that was so valuable, so dangerous? And who were these bad men she spoke of? He decided not to press her further, at least not for now. He could see that she was exhausted and frightened, and the last thing he wanted to do was add to her burden. "It's all right," he said, his voice reassuring. "You don't have to tell me anything you're not comfortable with. But if you need help, I'm willing to offer it." Mary looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and suspicion. She had been through so much, had learned to trust no one. But there was something about Jedediah, something in his eyes, that told her he was different. He was a good man, a man who had known loss and suffering, a man who understood the value of family. "We were headed west," she said, her voice slightly stronger, "to find a new life, a safe place to raise my children." But her voice trailed off, her gaze falling to the floor. "But," Jedediah prompted gently. "But they found us," she whispered, her voice filled with fear. "They're still looking for us. We have to keep moving." Jedediah's mind raced. He knew he couldn't let them leave, not like this. They were vulnerable, in danger, and he couldn't stand by and watch them walk into the unknown. He had to help them, even if it meant putting himself at risk. He looked at Mary, her face etched with worry, her children clinging to her side, and he made a decision. "You can stay here," he said, his voice firm and resolute. "You can stay here as long as you need to. I'll protect you." Mary looked at Jedediah, her eyes searching his. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice laced with disbelief. "We don't want to cause you any trouble. Trouble finds me whether I want it or not," Jedediah said with a wry smile. "Besides, a little company would do me good. This place has been too quiet for too long." And so, Mary and her children settled into Jedediah's ranch. They were careful not to overstep their welcome, offering to help with chores from the moment they arrived. Sarah, despite her young age, was a natural caregiver, tending to baby Ruth with gentle competence and helping Mary with the cooking and cleaning. Thomas, eager to prove his worth, assisted Jedediah with the outdoor tasks, mending fences, chopping wood, and even helping to repair the dilapidated barn. Lily, though small, was surprisingly adept at gathering eggs and tending to the chickens. And Samuel, with his boundless energy and infectious curiosity, followed Jedediah around like a shadow, asking questions and offering his assistance, even if it was more hindrance than help. Jedediah was amazed by their work ethic and their resourcefulness. They were used to hardship, to making the most of what they had, and their willingness to help transform the ranch from a desolate wasteland into a bustling home. The children's laughter filled the air, chasing away the silence that had haunted the place for so long. Mary's quiet strength and unwavering optimism inspired him to believe that maybe, just maybe, things could get better. He found himself looking forward to their company, to sharing meals with them, to hearing their stories. He started to teach Thomas how to ride a horse, showing him the basics of ranching. He helped Sarah with her reading and writing, marveling at her intelligence and thirst for knowledge. He even found himself playing with Lily and Samuel, rediscovering the joy of simple pleasures. Slowly but surely, Jedediah's heart began to thaw. The grief that had consumed him for so long began to recede, replaced by a sense of purpose and connection. He realized that he wasn't just helping Mary and her children. They were helping him, too. They were giving him a reason to live, a reason to hope, a reason to believe in the future. The ranch, once a symbol of his loss, was becoming a symbol of his redemption, a testament to the power of family and the resilience of the human spirit. He was starting to feel like himself again, maybe even better than before. He was starting to feel alive. One evening, as Jedediah and Mary sat on the porch watching the sunset, Mary finally revealed the full story. The children were inside, already asleep. The air was still, the only sound the chirping of crickets. "My husband, Caleb, he wasn't just a miner," she began, her voice barely a whisper. "He was a prospector. He spent years searching for gold, digging in every corner of these mountains." Jedediah listened intently, his gaze fixed on Mary's face. He could see the fear in her eyes, the weight of the secret she had been carrying for so long. "One day," she continued, "he found it. A vein of gold so rich, so pure, it was beyond anything he had ever imagined." She paused, taking a deep breath. But he wasn't the only one who knew about it. There was a gang of outlaws, led by a man named Snake Thompson. They had been watching Caleb for years, waiting for him to strike it rich. Jedediah's blood ran cold. Snake Thompson was a notorious outlaw, a ruthless killer who had terrorized these parts for decades. He had heard stories of Thompson's brutality, his willingness to do anything for gold. They tried to take the mine from him, Mary said, her voice trembling. They tortured him, threatened to kill me and the children. But Caleb never gave in. He refused to tell them where the mine was located. So they killed him? Jedediah asked, his voice filled with anger. Mary nodded, tears streaming down her face. They shot him in cold blood, right in front of me and the children. Then they ransacked our home, searching for maps, clues, anything that would lead them to the gold. But Caleb had hidden it well, Jedediah said, his mind racing. He never told them where it was. No, Mary replied, her voice filled with pride. He protected his family, even in death. But they haven't given up. They're still searching, still hunting us. They think I know where the mine is. Jedediah felt a surge of protectiveness, a fierce determination to keep Mary and her children safe. He knew that Snake Thompson would stop at nothing to get his hands on that gold, and he wouldn't hesitate to harm anyone who stood in his way. But Jedediah wasn't afraid. He had faced death before, and he wasn't about to let these innocent people suffer. Then we'll protect it, he said, his voice firm and resolute. We'll protect you. That gold mine may be valuable, but your lives are worth more than all the gold in the world. The next morning, Jedediah awoke with a renewed sense of purpose. He knew that Snake Thompson and his gang could arrive at any moment, and he had to be prepared. He spent the morning fortifying the ranch, reinforcing the doors and windows, and setting up makeshift alarms. He taught Mary and the older children how to use a rifle, showing them how to defend themselves if necessary. We need to be ready for anything, he said, his voice grim. Thompson is a dangerous man, and he won't hesitate to use violence. Mary nodded, her face etched with determination. She had lost her husband, but she wasn't about to lose her children. She would do whatever it took to protect them. Jedediah also used his knowledge of the land to their advantage. He knew every hidden path, every secret cave, every place where they could find refuge. He showed Mary and the children a hidden passage that led from the house into the mountains, a passage that he had discovered as a boy. This will be our escape route, he said. If Thompson comes, we'll use this to get away. It leads to a series of caves high in the mountains, places where they'll never find us. He also taught them how to cover their tracks, how to move silently through the wilderness, how to survive off the land. He shared his knowledge of edible plants and safe water sources, skills that he had learned from his father and grandfather. We have to be smart, he said. We can't fight them head-on. We have to use our wits, our knowledge of the land, to outsmart them. As they prepared for the inevitable confrontation, Jedediah couldn't help but think of Martha. He knew that she would have approved of his actions, that she would have been proud of him for helping Mary and her children. He felt her presence with him, guiding him, giving him strength. He also realized that he was no longer alone. He had found a new family, a new purpose in life. He was no longer just a grieving widower, clinging to a broken dream. He was a protector, a provider, a guardian. And he would do whatever it took to keep Mary and her children safe, even if it meant sacrificing his own life. The shock of losing Martha was still a part of him, but this new purpose drove him forward. The relative peace lasted only a few days. One afternoon, as Jedediah was teaching Thomas how to track animals, they spotted a cloud of dust on the horizon, rapidly approaching the ranch. Jedediah's heart sank. He knew who it was. Get back to the house, he told Thomas, his voice urgent. Tell Mary to get the children ready. It's them. Thomas, his eyes wide with fear, raced back to the house, while Jedediah stood his ground, his rifle in hand. He watched as the riders drew closer, their faces grim, their eyes filled with menace. There were 6 of them, all heavily armed, their horses lathered with sweat. At the head of the group rode Snake Thompson, a tall, gaunt man with a snake tattoo coiled around his neck. His eyes were cold and reptilian, his face scarred and weathered. He exuded an aura of cruelty and danger. Thompson reined in his horse in front of Jedediah, his gaze sweeping over the ranch. Well, he said, his voice a low growl. Looks like we found ourselves a little homestead here. Jedediah remained silent, his hand tightening around his rifle. He knew that any wrong move could be his last. We're looking for someone, Thompson continued, his eyes narrowing. A woman and her 5 children. Heard they might be hiding out around here. Jedediah met Thompson's gaze, his face expressionless. I haven't seen anyone, he said, his voice steady. I live here alone. Thompson smirked, a cruel glint in his eyes. Don't lie to me, old man, he said. I know they're here. I can smell their fear. He dismounted his horse and walked towards Jedediah, his hand resting on the butt of his pistol. Now, tell me where they are, he said, his voice menacing, or you'll regret it. Jedediah stood his ground, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew that he was outmatched, outnumbered, but he wasn't about to back down. He had made a promise to Mary and her children, and he wasn't about to break it. I told you, he said, his voice firm. I haven't seen anyone. Thompson's face twisted in anger. All right, old man, he said. You asked for it. He signaled to his men, who dismounted their horses and fanned out around the ranch, their weapons drawn. Search the place, Thompson ordered. Find them. The hunt had begun. As Thompson's men began to ransack the house, Jedediah knew he had to buy Mary and the children time. He stood his ground, blocking Thompson's path, engaging him in a tense standoff. You're wasting your time, Jedediah said, his voice firm despite the tremor in his hands. There's nothing here for you, just an old man and a rundown ranch. Thompson chuckled, a chilling sound that sent shivers down Jedediah's spine. I don't believe you, he said, his eyes boring into Jedediah's. I can see it in your eyes. You're hiding something. He grabbed Jedediah by the collar, his grip like iron. Tell me where they are, he hissed, his face inches from Jedediah's. I'll make you suffer. Jedediah refused to flinch. He knew that his life was on the line, but he couldn't betray Mary and her children. He had given them his word. I told you, he said, his voice unwavering. I haven't seen anyone. Thompson tightened his grip, his knuckles turning white. He was about to strike Jedediah when one of his men rushed out of the house, his face flushed with anger. They're gone, the man shouted. They were here, but they've disappeared. Thompson released Jedediah, his eyes blazing with fury. Where did they go? He demanded. Jedediah shrugged, feigning ignorance. How should I know? He said. Maybe they ran off into the mountains. Thompson glared at Jedediah, his face contorted with rage. He knew that Jedediah was lying, but he didn't have time to deal with him now. He had to find Mary and her children. Spread out, he ordered his men. Search the mountains. Don't let them get away. As Thompson and his men raced off into the mountains, Jedediah breathed a sigh of relief. He had bought them enough time. Inside the house, Mary had gathered her children and led them to the secret passage that Jedediah had shown them. It was a narrow, dusty tunnel that led down into the earth, a hidden route that Jedediah had discovered as a boy while playing in the caves. Stay close to me, Mary whispered to her children, and don't make a sound. They crept through the tunnel, their hearts pounding in their chests, the sounds of Thompson and his men searching the ranch echoing above them. They knew that their lives depended on reaching the mountains, on finding a safe place to hide. And they knew that Jedediah was risking everything to protect them. The game of cat and mouse had begun. Emerging from the tunnel, Mary and the children found themselves in a dense thicket of trees at the base of the mountains. The air was cool and crisp, a welcome relief from the stifling heat of the ranch. But they knew they couldn't rest. Thompson and his men would be hot on their trail. Jedediah, after seeing Thompson and his gang ride off in the wrong direction, quickly saddled Betsy and followed after Mary and the children. He knew the mountains better than anyone, and he intended to use that knowledge to protect them. He caught up with them a few hours later, finding them exhausted and scared. We can't stop here, he said, his voice urgent. They'll be tracking us. We need to keep moving. He led them deeper into the mountains, following a winding path that only he knew. He showed them how to walk on the rocks to avoid leaving footprints, how to blend in with the shadows, how to listen for the sounds of their pursuers. Thompson and his men were relentless. They searched every cave, every canyon, every hiding place. They were like bloodhounds sniffing out their prey. But Jedediah was always one step ahead of them. He used his knowledge of the terrain to set traps and diversions, leading them down dead ends, sending them on wild goose chases. He created false trails, leading them away from Mary and the children, buying them precious time to escape. One time, he created a rock slide, blocking a narrow pass and forcing Thompson and his men to take a longer, more difficult route. Another time, he set a fire, creating a smoke screen that obscured their trail. Mary was amazed by Jedediah's resourcefulness and courage. She had never met anyone like him before. He was a true hero, risking his life to protect her and her children. As they continued their flight through the mountains, Mary and Jedediah began to work together, combining their strengths to outsmart their pursuers. Mary, despite her fear, proved to be a quick learner, mastering the skills that Jedediah taught her. She helped him set traps, create diversions, and navigate the treacherous terrain. The chase was tense and relentless, but Jedediah was determined to keep Mary and her children safe. He knew that their lives depended on it, and he wouldn't let them down. The mountains had always been his sanctuary, and now he would use them to protect those who needed it most. The days turned into nights as Jedediah and Mary continued their desperate flight through the mountains. They were constantly on the move, never staying in one place for too long, always looking over their shoulders. The children, though exhausted and scared, showed remarkable resilience, their trust in Mary and Jedediah unwavering. Jedediah and Mary's teamwork became increasingly seamless. Jedediah's knowledge of the land was invaluable, but Mary's quick thinking and resourcefulness often provided the edge they needed. She noticed details that Jedediah missed, and she came up with innovative ways to use their limited resources. One day, they were forced to cross a narrow ravine, with Thompson and his men closing in. Jedediah had planned to create a diversion to draw them away, but Mary had a better idea. She gathered a pile of dry leaves and branches and set them ablaze, creating a thick cloud of smoke that obscured the ravine, making it impossible for Thompson and his men to see where they had gone. Another time, they were trapped in a small cave, with Thompson's men surrounding them. Jedediah was preparing for a shootout when Mary noticed a small opening in the back of the cave, hidden behind a waterfall. She led the children through the opening, which led to a hidden tunnel that allowed them to escape undetected. As they worked together, a bond of mutual respect and admiration grew between Jedediah and Mary. Jedediah admired Mary's strength and courage, her unwavering determination to protect her children. Mary admired Jedediah's kindness and generosity, his willingness to risk everything to help them. They began to rely on each other, to trust each other implicitly. They shared stories about their lives, their dreams, their losses. They found solace in each other's company, a sense of connection that had been missing from their lives for far too long. Jedediah found himself drawn to Mary's quiet strength and her unwavering spirit. He saw in her a reflection of Martha, a woman who had faced adversity with grace and courage. Mary, in turn, saw in Jedediah a man of honor and integrity, a man who had the capacity for great love and compassion. As they continued their flight through the mountains, they realized that they were no longer just strangers helping each other survive. They were becoming a family, bound together by shared experiences and a growing affection. And they knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together. They were a team. Their luck, however, was about to run out. After days of relentless pursuit, Thompson and his men finally managed to corner Mary and the children in a narrow canyon. The canyon walls rose sharply on either side, providing little cover. They were trapped. Mary, her face pale but resolute, gathered her children close. She knew that this could be the end. She had managed to protect them for so long, but now it seemed their fate was sealed. Thompson and his men rode into the canyon, their faces grim, their weapons drawn. "Well, well, well," Thompson said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Looks like we finally caught ourselves a little rabbit." Mary said nothing, her eyes fixed on Thompson's face. She knew that any sign of weakness would only embolden him. "Now," Thompson continued, his voice menacing, "tell me where the gold mine is, and maybe, just maybe, I'll let you and your children live." Mary refused to answer. She would never betray her husband's memory, never give Thompson the satisfaction of knowing where the gold was hidden. Thompson's face twisted in anger. "All right," he said, "you asked for it." He signaled to his men, who dismounted their horses and began to advance towards Mary and the children, their weapons raised. Just when all hope seemed lost, a shot rang out, echoing through the canyon. "Leave them alone." Thompson and his men turned to face Jedediah, their faces filled with surprise and anger. They had thought they had him outsmarted, but he had managed to outwit them once again. "Well, look who it is," Thompson said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. The old man, come to play hero. A final showdown was inevitable. Jedediah had even the odds, but the outlaws still held the advantage. It would take all of Jedediah's skill and courage, and perhaps a miracle, to get them out of this alive. The canyon erupted in gunfire. Jedediah, despite his age, moved with surprising agility, using the rocks and boulders for cover. He fired his rifle with deadly accuracy, taking down one outlaw after another. He wasn't the grieving old man anymore. He was a protector, fueled by adrenaline and a fierce determination to keep Mary and the children safe. Mary, remembering Jedediah's instructions, huddled with her children behind a large boulder, trying to stay out of the line of fire. Sarah, the eldest, kept a watchful eye on her younger siblings, comforting them and reassuring them that everything would be all right. Thompson, enraged by Jedediah's unexpected resistance, focused his attention on the old man. He fired his pistol repeatedly, trying to take him down, but Jedediah was too quick, too elusive. Jedediah knew that he couldn't win this fight alone. He needed Mary's help. He risked a glance towards her, signaling her to take cover behind a nearby rock. Mary understood immediately. She grabbed her rifle and, with Sarah's help, moved to the designated spot. From there, she provided covering fire, allowing Jedediah to move to a more advantageous position. Together, they fought like a well-oiled machine, their teamwork honed by days of fleeing through the mountains. They picked off the outlaws one by one, their numbers dwindling with each passing minute. Thompson, realizing that he was losing, grew desperate. He charged towards Mary and the children, intending to use them as hostages. Jedediah, seeing Thompson's move, knew that he had to act fast. He took aim and fired, his bullet striking Thompson in the shoulder. Thompson staggered, dropping his pistol. But Thompson was still a dangerous man. He pulled out a knife and lunged towards Mary, his eyes filled with rage. Just as Thompson was about to reach Mary, Jedediah tackled him to the ground, disarming him and pinning him down. A fierce struggle ensued, with both men fighting for their lives. Finally, Jedediah managed to gain the upper hand. He raised his fist and struck Thompson in the face, knocking him unconscious. The remaining outlaws, seeing their leader defeated, lost heart and fled, disappearing into the mountains. The canyon fell silent. The gunfire stopped. Jedediah had won. He slowly got to his feet, checking to see that Mary and the children were safe. The nightmare was finally over. With Snake Thompson unconscious and his remaining men scattered, their will broken, Mary and her children were finally safe. The immediate danger had passed. Jedediah, bruised and battered but alive, checked on Mary and the children, his heart swelling with relief. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Mary nodded, her eyes filled with gratitude. "We're safe because of you, Jedediah," she said. "Thank you." The children echoed her sentiments, their voices filled with emotion. They had been through so much, had faced so much fear, but now they could finally breathe easy. Jedediah, with Mary's help, tied up the unconscious Snake Thompson. ensuring that he couldn't cause any further harm. They knew that they had to turn him over to the authorities, but that could wait until morning. For now, they just wanted to rest, to recover from the ordeal they had endured. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the canyon, Jedediah and Mary gathered the children around a small fire. They shared a meager meal, their appetites dulled by exhaustion and adrenaline. But they were together, and that was all that mattered. That night, as the children slept soundly, Jedediah and Mary sat by the fire, talking in hushed tones. They discussed their options, their plans for the future. They knew that they couldn't stay in the canyon forever. They had to decide what to do next. "What about the gold mine?" Jedediah asked, his voice low. "Are you going to try to find it?" Mary hesitated, her face clouding over. "I don't know," she said. "It's brought nothing but trouble. Maybe it's best to just leave it be." Jedediah understood her reluctance. He had seen firsthand the greed and violence that the gold mine had inspired. But he also knew that it could provide Mary and her children with a better life, a chance to escape poverty and hardship. "It's your decision," he said. "I'll support you whatever you choose." Mary smiled, her eyes filled with affection. "Thank you, Jedediah," she said. "You've been so good to us. I don't know what we would have done without you." Jedediah reached out and took Mary's hand, his touch gentle but firm. "We're a family now, Mary," he said, "and families stick together, no matter what." The next morning, Jedediah and Mary, leaving Thompson tied to a tree for the authorities to find, led the children back to the ranch. The journey was quiet, filled with a sense of shared relief and cautious optimism. The ranch, once a symbol of Jedediah's grief and isolation, now represented something new, a sanctuary, a place of hope. The first few days back at the ranch were spent cleaning up the mess left by Thompson and his men and tending to the minor wounds they had sustained during the gunfight. The children, resilient as ever, pitched in with the chores, their laughter slowly returning as they began to feel safe again. Jedediah and Mary decided to leave the matter of the gold mine unresolved for the time being. They agreed that their priority was to rebuild their lives, to create a stable and loving home for the children. As the weeks turned into months, the ranch began to flourish once more. Jedediah, with Mary and the children's help, worked tirelessly to restore the land, planting crops, repairing fences, and tending to the animals. The once barren fields began to bloom, a testament to their hard work and dedication. Mary, with her nurturing spirit, transformed the house into a warm and inviting home. She taught the children how to cook, sew, and tend to the garden. She filled the air with music and laughter, bringing joy back into Jedediah's life. The children thrived under Jedediah and Mary's care. Sarah continued to excel in her studies, dreaming of becoming a teacher. Thomas showed a natural aptitude for ranching, eagerly learning from Jedediah. Lily blossomed into a confident and outgoing young girl, her infectious laughter filling the ranch with joy. Samuel, with his boundless energy and curiosity, explored every nook and cranny of the ranch, always eager to learn something new. And baby Ruth, now a toddler, brought a sense of sweetness and innocence to their lives. Jedediah and Mary found solace and comfort in each other's company. They shared their dreams, their fears, and their hopes for the future. They discovered a deep and abiding love, a love that had been forged in the crucible of hardship and adversity. The shock of his loss of Martha was still present, but the love grew stronger every day. They were building a family, a bond that would last a lifetime, and they were finally truly home. One evening, as Jedediah sat on the porch watching the sunset with Mary by his side and the children playing in the yard, he reflected on the events of the past few months. He realized that helping Mary and her children had done more than just save their lives. It had saved his own. Before they arrived, he had been a shell of a man, consumed by grief and despair, his life devoid of purpose. He had allowed Martha's death to define him, to rob him of his joy, his hope, his will to live. But Mary and her children had shown him that life was still worth living, that even in the face of tragedy, there was still beauty and love to be found. They had reminded him of the importance of family, of connection, of compassion. He realized that Martha wouldn't have wanted him to wallow in his sorrow. She would have wanted him to embrace life, to find happiness, to make a difference in the world. And that's exactly what he was doing. He had found a new purpose in protecting Mary and her children, in providing them with a safe and loving home. He had rediscovered the joy of teaching, of nurturing, of being a part of something bigger than himself. He was no longer alone. He had a family that loved him, a family that needed him, and he loved them in return. He realized that what had shocked him most was not Mary's past, but his own ability to love again. He looked at Mary, her face radiant in the golden light of the setting sun, and he felt a surge of gratitude. He had found love again, a love that was different from what he had shared with Martha, but no less profound. He knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, obstacles, and setbacks, but he was no longer afraid. He had Mary and her children by his side, and together they could face anything. He smiled, his heart filled with peace and contentment. He was finally home. He was finally whole. The ranch, once a symbol of his loss, was now a symbol of his redemption, a testament to the power of love and the resilience of the human spirit. And he knew, with absolute certainty, that Martha would be proud. His grief had been replaced with a new kind of love. A few weeks later, as they were working in the garden, Mary turned to Jedediah, her eyes filled with a quiet determination. "Jedediah," she said, "I've been thinking a lot about what we should do, and I've made a decision." Jedediah stopped working, his gaze fixed on Mary's face. He knew that she had been struggling with the decision of whether to stay at the ranch or move on, to try to find a new life somewhere else. "I've decided to stay," she said, her voice firm. "This is our home now. This is where we belong." Jedediah's heart leaped with joy. He had been secretly hoping that she would make this decision, but he hadn't wanted to pressure her. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice filled with emotion. Mary smiled, her eyes shining. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," she said. "This is where my children are safe, where they're loved. And this is where I want to be, with you." From that day forward, the ranch became their permanent home, a haven of love and laughter, a place where they could rebuild their lives and create new memories. Jedediah embraced his role as a father figure to Mary's children, teaching them the skills he had learned from his own father and grandfather. He taught Thomas how to ride a horse, how to rope cattle, how to mend fences. He taught Sarah how to read and write, how to appreciate the beauty of nature, how to stand up for what she believed in. He shared his knowledge of the land with all of them, teaching them how to identify edible plants, how to track animals, how to survive in the wilderness. He filled the void left by their father, providing them with guidance, support, and unconditional love. Mary, in turn, taught Jedediah how to be a better man, how to open his heart, how to embrace life with joy and gratitude. She showed him the importance of family, of connection, of compassion. Together, they created a loving and nurturing environment for the children, a place where they could grow and thrive, where they could learn and explore, where they could be themselves. They were a family bound together by love, loyalty, and a shared commitment to building a better future. The trauma of the past was behind them. They finally had a future. Years passed, and the ranch thrived. The land was fertile, the animals were healthy, and the family was happy. The scars of the past had faded, replaced by a sense of peace and contentment. The final scene unfolds in the warm glow of the setting sun. Jedediah, his face lined with wrinkles, but his eyes still sparkling with life, sits at the head of the dinner table. Mary, her face radiant with love and happiness, sits beside him, their hands intertwined. The children, now older and wiser, fill the rest of the table. Sarah, a bright and articulate young woman, is home from college, sharing stories of her studies and her dreams of becoming a teacher. Thomas, a strong and capable young man, is running the ranch alongside Jedediah, his skills and knowledge growing with each passing year. Lily, a confident and outgoing young woman, is pursuing her passion for music, her beautiful voice filling the ranch with joy. Samuel, a curious and adventurous young man, is planning a trip to explore the world, eager to learn about different cultures and places. And Ruth, now a beautiful teenager, is helping Mary with the younger children, her gentle nature and loving heart shining through. The family is laughing and sharing stories, their voices blending together in a harmonious chorus. They are reminiscing about their adventures in the mountains, about their encounters with wildlife, about their triumphs and their challenges. Jedediah raises his glass, his voice filled with emotion. To family, he says, to love, and to a future filled with happiness and peace. The family echoes his sentiments, raising their glasses in a toast. They are grateful for everything they have, for the love they share, for the resilience they have shown in the face of adversity. As the sun dips below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the ranch, Jedediah looks around the table, his heart overflowing with love. He realizes that he has found what he was searching for all along: a family, a purpose, a home. He is no longer alone. He is surrounded by love, by laughter, by hope. And he knows that whatever the future holds, they will face it together as a family. The camera pans out, showing the ranch in all its glory, a testament to the power of love, the resilience of the human spirit, and the enduring strength of family. The tale has ended. The family has become complete.